The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. And attend ourselves carnivals with rides, company picnics, all sorts of events. We are going to talk about safety at those events. Mitch, thank you for coming today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell everyone what your origin story is? How did you get started in the entertainment business?
Should I start with once upon a time or just go right into it?
Either way.
Okay. Basically, I started as a police explorer for law enforcement explorer posts in Skokie, Illinois, where I grew up, and I thought I wanted to become a police officer. Talk about safety, right? But anyhow, so I thought I wanted to become a police officer, and I attended all these Explorer meetings, and I was very, very involved in the Explorer program, which for those people who don't know, it's a division of Boy Scouts of America. Awesome program that's still around today. I attended lots of different meetings for the different groups of explorers. So there's like law enforcement, fire, high adventure, different interests. So one of the interests the Explorer program had was a clown post. So that's right, a clown post. So it was a group of, at that time, young individuals, kids, who thought they wanted to be clowns, who wanted clown training. And I went to one meeting just to really help the post and give them advice and different skills and leadership. And long story short, I loved it and thought it was really, really cool. Felt clowning was really interesting. And I found out the real key is, and I'll just tell you right now, I found out how much clowns make. It's like, holy tamale, I'm working at 7-Eleven and I could become a clown and make a whole lot more money. That's where I started my clown career, and that's how the company started.
Sounds kind of silly, if you know what I mean. How old were you when you actually started the company?
I started exploring, I was probably about 14. When I started the company, I was actually 16 years old. I was still in high school. And I started as a clown, blowing balloon animals, doing magic. It's been a long, long time. I'll tell you exactly how old I am, but it's been 33 years. So I've been doing it for 33 years. When I started the business, I started as a clown, and then I did magic. I also did emceeing for weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, Sweet 16 as a DJ, so I DJ'd. So when I first started, it was more of an entertainer with balloon twisting and face painting, and then slowly but surely, the company grew and offered much more services.
Like what?
Glad you asked. All different types of things. So we started with one popcorn machine and one bouncy house and moonwalk. And the first time somebody asked me for it, I picked it up, I brought it there and charged a little more than I rented it for. And I said, holy cow, I could just buy my own bouncy house. So I bought a bouncy house. I saved up from doing all my clown shows. I bought a bouncy house, and then actually, before I did the bouncy house, rewind a little bit here, I actually started doing costume characters. So those were look-alike characters with the big heads, the mascot-style costumes, and I did birthday parties and events with the costumes. Then after the costumes, then I bought the first bouncy house, and then a popcorn machine, did popcorn, and slowly but surely, I started buying more of the inflatables, different inflatables, slides and bouncy houses and bungee runs and obstacle courses and gladiator jousts and Velcro walls. And then all like the fun food machines like popcorn, snow cones, cotton candy, soft pretzels. It's almost like a hobby in the beginning. I kept adding to my collection. And then I bought different things, casino games, blackjack, craps tables, roulette. And over the years, the collection has really, really become incredible as far as the diversity of the things that we offer. Sometimes when I hear things that our company's buying to use for entertainment at a corporate event, it's even pretty amazing to me. I mean, there's certain things like an iceless ice rink, which is a synthetic ice rink that's made out of polyurethane plastic. For lack of a better term, it's kind of like a huge giant cutting board that you would use to cut vegetables. We put it on the floor and people could ice skate. A roller skating ring, which is the portable roller skating rink, where we actually bring the whole floor and people could roller skate, bumper cars, merry-go-rounds, Ferris wheels, windjammers, swing rides, and all types of fun stuff.
What do you do for fun? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Since the show is about safety, and you mentioned bouncy houses and obstacle courses, can you talk about the safety of those types of objects and what training does your employees go through to monitor, set up, that type of thing?
Awesome question. Basically, in regards to safety, the first thing starts with the way the equipment's installed. It has to be done in a professional manner. And some of that is very, very, very basic. And I know when you talk about inflatables and obstacle courses and those types of things, unfortunately, everyone has seen the catastrophes and disasters on the news. and the different things that happen where they see the moonwalk fly and kids get hurt. I can tell you with confidence that we've been doing it. I mean, I've been doing it a really long time. I told you how long, 33 years, and we've never, ever, ever, ever had kids fly away in a bouncy house. It's never happened. The first step is, one, knowing when to set up an inflatable and knowing when not to set up an inflatable. If the winds are high, that means you don't set up an inflatable. So when people think it's secured or they'll hold on to it or they'll watch it, if the winds are too high or there's gusts of winds, smart companies and smart people know when not to set up an inflatable. So the first step is knowing when to do it and when not to do it. Step number 2 is, even if there's no wind, is to properly anchor and make sure the inflatable's safely installed. And that simply means that you use the right stake, it's the right diameter, it's the right length, it's installed into the ground correctly, and there's enough anchor points based on each inflatable. And each manufacturer and each inflatable has different requirements, and as long as you follow them, we've never ever had any issues at all. So those are the 2 main safety guidelines in regards to the inflatables. Rides are a little more complicated. There's installation, making sure the ground is level, making sure the ride's installed correctly, making sure you have somebody who knows how to install the ride. And then there's safety checkpoints, making sure that it's done right. When somebody does something over and over and over, sometimes they can miss certain things. So you have to have a checklist to make sure everything's done in the correct fashion, which we do. So our staff are all trained in, one, knowing how to install and when to install the equipment the correct way.
If a school books a bouncy house and you're asked to install it on asphalt, you talked about the stakes. How do you secure it on a concrete or an asphalt parking lot?
Awesome question, and we do it all the time. Basically, there's multiple ways of doing it. The most common, we use sandbags. And a typical stake, depending on the stake and the grass, typically has what they call a tug weight of about 500 pounds, which means one stake usually can withstand 500 pounds of pressure. So we use sandbags. Now, obviously, you can't duplicate 500 pounds of pressure with a sandbag that's 50 pounds. So you have to use multiple sandbags and increase the amount of sandbags you use based on the height of the equipment, the size of the equipment. And the other way we do it is with water barrels. The water barrels don't come full. We actually fill them on site. So when you tell people to use water barrels, that's great if it's in your driveway or in a parking lot next to a building where there's a water spigot. But when you're in the middle of a parking lot with no water nearby, you can't fill the water barrels. Then we use sandbags. But if there's water nearby, we use water barrels. And depending on the equipment, sometimes we'll use 25-gallon drums, 50-gallon drums.
Very good. I did not know that. From a parent's point of view, how can they reduce their risk and ensure that their children aren't going to, say, bump their heads against each other in a bouncy house or collide or otherwise injure themselves?
They can absolutely minimize the risk and really make it so the risk is so minimal, it's almost guaranteed not to happen. And that's by, if they have different age kids or there's different age kids at the party, not allowing a 13-year-old kid to go into an inflatable with a 2-year-old kid. Because if the 13-year-old kid is doing drop kicks or being really crazy and jumping up and down and with tons of movement, and there's a little 2-year-old, there's a really, really good chance the 2-year-old's not going to get hurt from jumping, but the 2-year-old may get smacked just because the 13-year-old's jumping crazy. So if you put a bunch of kids in the bouncy house, this is typical just moonwalks. But if their age is similar, the risk of injury really, really becomes a lot less than if there's different age kids. And the other thing is just slides or any of the inflatables is really listening to the attendant and following their direction, following their rules. For example, if your child's on one of our items, let's just say our giant slide, it's a 26-foot high inflatable slide. It's approximately 35 feet long, approximately 15 feet wide. It weighs about 1,300 pounds. So it's a massive, massive inflatable. When kids climb up the stairs and when they get to the top, they sit down on their bottom and they slide down. That's the way to do it, where it's fun, it's cool, it's interesting, and it's really, really safe. The way not to do it is to try to do flips. So some kids get to the top, they try to do a flip and a way down. So there's certain things that manufacturers have done and we've actually done to the inflatables to tweak them to make it so you can't do flips. For example, we've actually sewn in a piece of material across the top of the slide so kids can't do flips. They have to sit down on the bottom and they slide under the material on their bottoms to get to the bottom of the slide. The other thing is don't slide down head first. Sit on your bottom. That's the way slides intended to be used. They're not intended to slide down on your belly.
So these events are obviously very, very fun. I've been to some of them. I've had some of these inflatables at my own parties. When there is an attendant and they're dealing with parents who may be prone to conflict and they want their kid in it right away, how do the attendants handle conflict among either children or parents?
You hit it on the head, Marcus. Some parents you would think really do like conflict, the way they talk to the staff. And the real key is they need to listen to the attendants. The attendants are trained. They're professionals. They know how to give instructions. They know what instructions to give. Parents really, really need to stress to their children that you need to listen to the people in charge, and not necessarily adults. We have college students and college kids, even high school kids sometimes, that could be watching certain attractions that are responsible young, I call them young adults, but they're 17, 18, and they need to follow the instructions of the people that are there giving instructions. And really their job is to do several things, but most importantly, and of the utmost importance, is keep the people, the participants, safe on the attractions and on the rides and the inflatables. So when they say, okay, it's your turn, or stand here, let the 3 kids who are in the bouncy house finish, or it's not your turn to go on the slide, or 2 kids through the inflatable obstacle course at once and the other kids have to wait, they need to follow the instructions and only go on with the instructions they're told. And sometimes it's simple, like, okay, take off your shoes, take off your glasses. You can't have a long necklace hanging on your neck, but their job and their goal is to keep all those kids safe. So the parents would just know to tell their kids to listen to the attendants, listen to the people in charge, and you'll have a fun, safe time at the event that you're going to.
It sounds like a great opportunity for young adults who are looking for employment. Do you have any openings?
We do. We're always hiring. Anybody who wants to work and have fun and go to parties, I always tell people I party for a living. So if they want to have parties and have fun, doing this is definitely a great thing to do and lots of fun. You can be outside, and we have lots of openings. We're always looking for people who want to work and make money.
How would someone apply for a position?
If they'd be interested, they could always check out our website at celebrationauthority.com. And there's definitely information and a whole jobs page and career page where they could find out information.
At other events, what have you seen that was very dangerous that obviously your company is not going to repeat? But what are some cringy moments that you've seen with other companies that maybe aren't as advanced as yours?
Sure. So some of the things you'd see is going back to what we spoke about a few minutes ago, and that would be just the stabilization of the equipment. Now that we're telling all your listeners, next time they go to their church event or their birthday party or the bouncy house in the backyard, they'll look for it. But sometimes you'll see inflatables just sitting, no stakes, no weights, no sandbags, simply absolutely nothing, just sitting there hoping the wind doesn't pick up. The other thing you'll see very, very common is bouncy houses in people's backyards where there's 10, 12, 15, 20 kids, but no supervision, no adults. That means the kids are just doing what they want, how they want, when they want, where they want, and doing whatever they want, and there's no adult supervision at all. The companies are just dropping off a bouncy house, leaving it in the backyard, and mom and dad or the adults or whoever's supposed to be supervising the kids inside the bouncy house aren't at all. And that's just, in my opinion, the recipe for a disaster, meaning kids know how to have fun, they know what they want to do, but sometimes they don't understand that there's a potential to get hurt. So adult supervision isn't there. And I see that all the time at parties I'm invited to.
So are you saying you would recommend if someone's going to rent a inflatable from you or a ride to also have an attendant at the ride from your company who is properly trained?
That's a great point, and we suggest that all the time, and I highly 110% recommend that. When people insist they want the inflatable at their home, they don't want an attendant at their home, we do events like that and deliveries like that, and then we really stress people calling us that are placing their order that it's absolutely critical and a necessity that they have to have adult supervision at all times. And the other thing that I didn't point out earlier, and I probably should have, is when they are dropped off and they're left at your home, is that when you're not watching it and you don't have adult supervision, all you have to do is flick the switch or unplug the plug of the blower. These units deflate really quickly, and they also inflate really quickly. So if there's no adult supervision, or you're going out for a couple of hours, and instead of leaving the bouncy house in your front yard with all the other kids in the neighborhood just looking at it, turn it off, unplug it, let it deflate so it's safe and don't let anybody else go in that inflatable. When you come home and your kids and your friends are ready to bounce again, you plug it back in, takes about 90 seconds, you'll be fully inflated, and they're ready to rock and roll again. Just leave the stakes in the ground, you unplug it, let it deflate, and then when it's inflated and ready to go again, they can use it.
Can people use inflatables in wet weather?
It really depends on how much it's raining and how wet they get. So we always tell people you have to use your own judgment. If they have good judgment, as long as it's not like climbing walls, it's a bouncy house or a slide, as long as we don't think the conditions are unsafe. If we do, we typically will stop in the rain, dry it off, and then use it again. Some of the inflatables actually have roofs. The roofs are usually sun protectors to keep the sun from hitting the kids directly or the people using the inflatable. But sometimes those sunshades that are over the inflatables actually keep some of the water and rain out. If it's pouring, I would absolutely not use it. Of course, lightning, don't even stay outside. If it's raining, definitely. If you think it's safe and it seems like it's safe, and as long as there's no winds, it should be okay.
This is more of a curiosity question. You talked about the giant slide that's 1,300 pounds. How many people do you need to properly set it up?
We typically will send 3 staff, but we have trucks that have lift gates, so they don't have to lift it. It gets rolled out of the truck onto a cart and rolled to the area it's being set up.
Do the employees have any medical training, or are they instructed to call 911 if there's an injury? How does that all play out?
It's a good question, and it's very potential that stuff can, and not potentially, but it definitely can happen. So it's a good thing, and they are trained. They don't have medical training. Their training is what to do in case somebody gets hurt. And the answer is you call 911. A lot of times we do events at schools, we do events at camps, corporate events, and all different types of events. So every group has their own guidelines, their own rules with who's in charge and who gets contacted. Our rule as a company is we don't ask the client, we just call 911. So if somebody gets hurt, for example, at a school event, and sometimes the kids are just running and they get hurt and they're not even on the inflatable, they're running near the inflatable. Our staff, simple rule, you just call 911. And if it was the wrong decision, that's for the school to decide, or the paramedics to decide, or the police that show up to the scene decide. But that way, if you're not sure what's wrong, it's better to, my theory, and I don't know if it's the right theory, but it's my theory, it's always better to err and have too much protection there and too much law enforcement or paramedics versus not having anybody there at all.
As a public safety professional for a long, long time, I completely agree with you. If you're ever in doubt, call 911. I know that police, public safety, law enforcement would rather respond to a non-issue than have, holy cow, something bad has happened, and they could have helped. They could have maybe not prevented it, but responded and helped treat whomever is injured or solve the problem. So if someone wants to host a party, how do they do that? How do they rent your stuff? How do they contact you? How do they hire entertainers? What's the best thing that they can do?
So I'm glad you asked. So really, there's no time too soon. Obviously, not everyone who calls us wants to actually plan a party today, but sometimes they're curious. They just want to know what's available or what possibilities do they have, what creative ideas do we have. Maybe it's an event they've done for years and years, and they're thinking about adding something new this year, or it's an event they've never done, and they just want to know where to start. So the best thing they could always do is go to our website, celebrationauthority.com, and find out information. They could download a catalog. They could look at pictures. They can get different ideas and inspiration from other events we've done and videos. The website is definitely a great tool for anybody to learn a lot about how to do a party, what they could do for a party, different ideas, not just parties, but corporate events and team building and anything else that they'd possibly want to just bring a little extra pizzazz into.
I know that several times a year you send out an electronic copy of your catalog. How can someone get on that list?
If they went to the website, celebrationauthority.com, and there's a button on the website where they could be added to our mailing list, all they'd have to do is enter their email address, and they would ultimately receive any different offers, specials, catalogs, anything that we offer throughout the year. They'd get that throughout the year, so they would know when new catalogs are available or seasonal catalogs. We usually do seasonal catalogs for Halloween or the holidays or summer catalog or anything like that.
So you mentioned a popcorn machine early on. I probably should have asked this earlier, but can you talk to us about food prep and food safety and how basically we keep the crud, the germs off of the food when it's being prepared, or how you keep the crud in the food
Got it.
safe.
So we do lots of preparation with, we call it fun food. So it's popcorn, snow cones, cotton candy, soft pretzels, nachos and cheese, funnel cakes, all the good stuff. Keeps me nice and thin. That's a joke. Really not thin. But anyhow, basically what we do is two things. One, whenever all of our staff are working with food, everybody wears hats. Even if it's hot outside in the summer, everyone has their hair covered with hats. And the second thing is, from as soon as they get near the food, we bring hand sanitizers or wash stations on site. And they all wear gloves. They glove up. So whether they're serving snow cones or cotton candy, they wear gloves. And we make sure that our staff that's there are the only people who are serving the food if we're attending the food. Now, if a client just rents a popcorn machine and they want to do it themselves, that's totally fine. We actually will allow them to attend it and do the popcorn themselves. And then when the machine comes clean, all the product is given to them in closed, sealed boxes. And for schools, when we deliver the food to encourage people to use gloves, we actually always deliver a few pairs of gloves too, because that's the best way to serve food and really keep any kind of germs out of the food and allow people to have a good time.
You were an entertainer. Back in the day, you were a clown, you were Santa Claus, you were the biggest elf anyone ever saw, 6'2" tall elf. Can you tell us some of the best things that have happened to you as an entertainer?
First, I wasn't an elf. I was a Jolly Green Giant, but no, I was an elf. The biggest elf. Some of the funny things that have happened to me as an entertainer. Gosh, all kinds of stuff. I could tell you the craziest dream I used to have all the time when I was an entertainer is I would have dreams. Well, forget it. Dreams really isn't a good word. I had nightmares because when I first started, I was doing clowning a lot. So I would always have the same fear. And it's so goofy. I haven't thought about this in years and years. But I would always have a nightmare that I would go to a clown show and forget to put on my makeup. So I think it's so silly and irrational, but it's the craziest nightmare I used to have all the time, is that I'd wake up and I'd pack my clown bag and my balloons and my face paints and all the games I would do, and that I would just go to the party and put on my makeup before I'd go. A goofy story is I did do Mr. Claus himself many, many times. And one time I was sitting in the parking lot and I was ready to go in. It was at a restaurant and I was going to play Mr. Claus. I realized, holy cow, I forgot the white makeup for my eyebrows. And I had no brown eyebrows. I was young. There was no gray hair in my hair then. And I was like, wow, what am I going to do? So I remember I had whiteout. That's how many years ago this was. Whiteout was a thing. And for any of the kids listening, their parents will tell you what whiteout was. Nowadays, I don't even know if they sell whiteout anymore. But I remember taking whiteout and actually putting it on my finger and making my brown eyebrows look white or gray before I went into the restaurant to be Santa Claus. So there's a lot of other stories I could bore you for hours and hours, but those are probably the two thoughts. I don't know if they're really stories, but the two thoughts that bounce in my head the most. Another story, I'll have one more quick story. I was an elf, and I was with the Santa Claus, and we were at a home in Wadsworth, Illinois. I still remember where it was. I actually remember the street too, but that's enough details. Anyway, and the lady, we did this event every year, year after year. She actually knew us and knew the Santa Claus. It was a different performer, and I was the elf, the biggest elf. Anyhow, long story short, we were upstairs in the bedroom, and we were joking, and the performer I was with, the Santa Claus, was making jokes, and all of a sudden we were shaking, and his bell started ringing, and we had to go down early, and the kids heard Santa Claus was there, so it was really funny. But there's lots of cool stories and fun times that we had that I had as a performer and DJing. Lots of fun. It was a great way and a great career. It's been a lot of fun so far.
I think I might know that other performer. I think it was me.
I think so too.
Very good. Mitchell, thank you for taking time with us. What final thoughts can you share about having fun and maintaining a safe environment while you're having fun? What are your final thoughts for everyone?
My final thoughts are, and this isn't something that I spoke about, but it's really critical. And when you go to events, we talked about listening to the staff and the attendants, but another thing is, I said taking off your shoes and going to the inflatable. So a lot of people think when they go to an event at a forest preserve, for example, that they're at the event, kids take off their shoes to go in the bouncy house. And when you're going from one inflatable to the next, and I see this is probably the most common injury and the most common thing I see multiple times in the summer. And that's why I'm saying it, because this really can keep you safe, keep your kids safe, and it's simple. And that is when you go off an inflatable and you're done, put on your shoes before your kid runs around, before they go to the next inflatable. And the reason is you don't know what party was there the day before you, the morning before you, or the day 2 days earlier. If there were people there and there's broken glass or nails or any other parties, kids step on broken glass all the time. They take off their shoes to go in the bouncy house. We checked the surface we're setting the inflatable up on. We checked the area around the inflatable before we set the inflatable up to make sure we're not setting it on grass. And when the kids get off, they're not going to be in grass. But we don't check 100 feet away and 200 feet away. And if kids are running around without their shoes and step on glass, it's not a pretty sight. It's horrible, and it's not fun to see adults, kids, anybody get hurt. So my tip for the final thought is when you're done on the inflatable, put your shoes on, go to the next inflatable, and then have fun on the second inflatable and third inflatable and fourth inflatable.
What about bringing slides or Crocs or something that's easy to take on and off for your kids?
It's definitely a good idea. Anything that's going to keep their feet protected. At the end of events, we always have people who leave their shoes there. I mean, that's how crazy it gets. Sometimes kids take off their shoes. They literally forget where they are. But that's a great idea, Marcus. Crocs or slides, because that way, if the shoes don't have to get tied and untied, especially if it's for a youngster who doesn't know how to tie their shoes yet, your idea is brilliant. It may be much easier for them to slip on their Crocs, their slides, whatever kind of shoes they have. They're easy to get on and off, and then go to the next attraction versus having shoes they have to tie every single time.
I also think that Velcro shoes are out of fashion, so I don't know if you'd be able to find
You're the only one I know that wears Velcro shoes still. That's all right.
Thanks a lot. All right, very good. Today we spoke with Mitchell Dicker of Celebration Authority Clowning Around. His website is celebrationauthority.com. He is certainly looking for new people that would like to participate in running a party, as well as if you have an event coming up. You can also contact him at the same website, sign up for the newsletter. Mitchell, thank you for your time today.
Absolutely, thank you.
People that would like to participate in running a party, as well as if you have an event coming up, you can also contact him at the same website, sign up for the newsletter. Mitchell, thank you for your time today.
Absolutely, thank you.
Stay safe out there, and pretty soon I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick with Firearm Mentor, signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.